just spent a week at the Technical Training Center in Detroit, getting the lowdown on all the new 57 models. They're really something to be proud of, and the engineering improvements sure help us out in service.
Let's look at some of those new pictures you brought back, Fritz. I bet you the fellows have a lot of questions.
You must be reading my mind, Tech. I'm wondering about this picture of the new front suspension. I never saw anything like it before.
That's no surprise, Murph. It's a brand new suspension, eh, Fritz?
It sure is. What's more, all 57 models will use this new front suspension. It features torsion bar springs instead of coil springs. In addition, ball joints are used in attaching the steering knuckle to the upper and lower control arms. This does away with kingpins.
That's new, all right. I bet it has a lot of advantages, too.
Advantages? Man, this new setup gives us far greater stability, longer life, easier handling, and then some.
Yes, and our owners will really appreciate the added stability. Remember how cars used to dip down during a hard brake application? Well, not anymore. Our new upper control arm mounting prevents that annoying brake dip. The front inner pivot of each upper control arm attaches to the frame much higher than the rear inner pivot. So, when stopping, forces in the upper control arm resulting from the braking action work against the normal tendency of the car to dip. You get a far more level stop.
Sounds great, Fritz.
Well, that's not all, Murph. There's a terrific improvement in cornering.
Right. You can drive more safely on curves with very little side sway or roll. Even on sharp turns, you get a smooth, level ride. Now, better cornering, of course, is a result of both the new front and rear suspension, plus the lower center of gravity. Now, besides anti-brake dip and better cornering, there's greater stability at high speeds and on rough roads. Much of this improved stability comes from a lower center of gravity, the new rear spring suspension, and the stabilizing effect of the high fins on the rear fenders.
Besides giving greater stability, the new suspension is easier to take care of.
Yeah, that's good news. What's one item we'll find easier?
Lubrication, Tony. There are only 8 fittings, about 1/3 the number we had before. 1 in each steering knuckle ball joint and 1 in each of the 4 tie rod ball studs. No lubrications needed at the upper and lower control arm inner pivots. They're supported in rubber-insulated bushings.
Adjustment's easier, too. If you want to level up the front suspension, you just turn an adjusting bolt at the rear anchor of the torsion bar for the proper height.
Very easy. That I like. Now, those service advantages are fairly clear, but I'm still in the dark on how the torsion bar springs replace the coil springs.
Okay, let's talk about torsion bar construction and then go into how it works. For instance, both torsion bars are parallel mounted inside the frame side rails. At the front, they're assembled in the lower control arm at the inner pivot point. The rear end of each torsion bar indexes into an anchor supported in a frame bracket. Each bar is made of special steel with high resiliency and stress qualities.
As the spring, the torsion bar can store up 1/3 more energy per pound than a coil spring, and 3 times the energy stored up by a leaf spring.
Yeah, Tech, and torsion bar spring operation is easy to understand, too. For example, if you held a piece of ordinary garden hose firmly in one hand and twisted the opposite end, well, that's basically how the torsion bar spring works. The end held firmly is the anchor. The hose is the torsion bar spring. Your twisting hand is the lower control arm.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean.
Good. Now, on all our cars, both torsion bar springs are preloaded with the car weight on the springs. So, when one front wheel rolls over a high spot and the outer end of the lower control arm moves upward, it causes additional twisting in the torsion bar. The bar quickly sets up a resistance to the upward movement of the wheel and control arm and provides the spring action.
I see. But what about those diagonal bars in the picture?
Oh, you must mean the 2 struts, Murph. There's 1 on each side. They are connected between the lower control arms and the front cross member. Their job is to control any fore and aft movement of the lower control arms. They hold the lower control arms in correct alignment, yet allow unrestricted up and down movement of the front wheels. The front of each strut is mounted in rubber. The rear end is rigidly mounted to the outer end of the lower control arm. Now, as a result, the flexible front mounting lets the struts move up and down with the control arms and yet lets them pivot where they're mounted in the frame.
That's fairly clear. Anything else special about the new suspension?
Boy, I'll say, never lubricate any of those rubber pivot points. No powder, brake fluid, no nothing.
That's a good point. Lubricating those rubber bushings will destroy their gripping action. That'll cause failure and they'll squeak.
Okay, nothing on the rubber bushings. No graphite. We'll watch it.
Attaboy. Now, when you go about checking the front end, if the car isn't level, follow the same methods you've used before. Put the car on a level floor, inflate the tires properly, and have only the car weight on the springs. On one side, measure from the lowest point of the lower control arm ball joint to the floor. Also, measure from the underside of the lower control arm bushing housing between the arm flanges to the floor. Find the difference between those two measurements. Then, take the same measurements on the other side and find the difference. Compare those two figures, and they should be within 1/4 of an inch of each other.
Then if it is necessary to level the car, I'd just turn the adjusting bolt at the torsion bar spring rear anchor to bring the two sides within that 1/4 inch, huh?
That's the ticket, Murph. Now remember, any leveling adjusting you make will affect headlamp and front wheel alignment. So you'll have to check that and correct it if necessary.
Incidentally, adjusting caster and camber is new with this new suspension. It's all done with 1/16 and 1/32 inch shims.
Yeah, and you insert those shims between the upper control arm support brackets in the frame. A 1/16 inch shim will change caster about a 1/2 degree.
What should those caster settings be, Fritz?
Well, the settings vary depending on whether the car has manual or power steering, so refer to the table of settings and the procedure for adjusting caster in this reference book.
Okay, Fritz, will do.
Now, when you adjust caster, you also affect camber, so you'd have to check that. Camber setting is the same on all models. The right wheel should be 0 degrees, plus or minus 1/4 degree. The left wheel should be a positive 1/4 degree, plus or minus 1/4 degree, with positive 3/8 preferred. If you have to change camber, you use the same shims, but you change shims equally at both brackets. A 1/16 inch shim at each bracket will change camber about 5/16 of a degree.
Okay. Now somebody please turn the record over. Then we'll spotlight more new car features on the pictures Fritz brought back from Detroit.
Before we leave the front end suspension, I'd like to say something about toe in.
Do we adjust toe in any differently?
No, just the same, Murph. The toe in specification on all models, with or without power steering, is 3/32 to 5/32 inch, with 1/8 preferred.
3 to 5/32. Got it.
Fine. Now, here's something else. The Torqueflight transmission is available on all cars. That's the 3-speed automatic transmission, you'll recall. And there are a couple of new things to learn about it. First of all, the starting switch on Chrysler and Dodge Torqueflight transmission jobs is connected to the N button. You push the button in about 1/8 of an inch past the normal button range to start the car.
Pretty neat, and it sure simplifies starting.
Now, that's a safety feature, too, Tony. It makes sure the transmission is always in neutral before the engine will start.
I see. A little extra travel on the N button.
Suppose you shift from drive to neutral while the engine's running. Any danger of engaging the starting switch?
Nope. A vacuum safety lockout switch on the intake manifold breaks the starting circuit when the engine's running.
Good deal. Okay, what else is new on the transmission?
Well, adjusting specifications for the kickdown band and for the low and reverse band on Dodge and Plymouth are different from Chrysler and DeSoto. When making the band adjustments, first tighten both bands 70 to 75 inch-pounds. Then, on Dodge and Plymouth, back off the kickdown band adjusting screw 3 1/2 turns. When you adjust the low and reverse band, back off the adjusting screw 2 5/8 turns. Chrysler and DeSoto specifications are the same as 56 models.
Say, Now you can adjust line pressure in the Torqueflight transmission, too. Fritz can give you that story.
Righto, Tech. The regulator valve now has an adjusting screw and lock nut in the spring retainer. That means the spring force against the regulator valve can be adjusted to increase or decrease line pressure. You just turn the adjusting screw in or out of the retainer. This increases or decreases the spring force against the valve and increases or decreases line pressure.
Boy, that's okay. You used to have to take that valve out and inspect it in the spring when the line pressure was off. Remember?
Yeah, Murph, I sure do. This is going to be a lot easier.
That adjustment only covers a 15-pound pressure variation from the 90 pounds you're supposed to have. More than 15 pounds off means you'll have to look for other causes.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tech. Well, now let's look at an engine feature. That'll also save us some time and work.
Which feature is that, Fritz?
This new carburetor air cleaner, Tony, it uses a dry micronic fiber element that doesn't need any oil to filter the incoming air.
Fiber? How's that going to hold up?
It's going to hold up better than ever, Murph. Besides longer life, it's engineered especially for the car and improves performance. What's more, service on it is a snap.
Yeah, a snap is right. Here's all that's needed. Every 5,000 miles, you remove the element for cleaning. You tap it lightly on a flat surface to knock off dust and dirt. Every 15,000 miles, replace the element with the approved type. You'd clean and replace more often on cars operating in dusty areas. Now, there are two styles of air cleaners, by the way. One is flat and mounts on top the carburetor. The other is cylindrical and mounts off to one side. Both do the same job and they're serviced the same way.
Okay. Now, I heard that the heating system's brand new, too, right?
Yep, you can get a heating system alone, or you can get a combined heating and air conditioning system. Both compact, improved design units are mounted in the dash panel. Let's look at this drawing of the heating system first. Fresh air from outside enters the intake grill located in the cowl at the base of the windshield. It then passes into an air chamber on the passenger side of the dash panel. This chamber is called a plenum chamber. Plenum means air at pressure greater than atmospheric pressure, a result of the ram effect of the incoming air.
The heater core, mounted on the engine side of the plenum chamber, has engine coolant circulating through it, just as in the former heating system.
Hooray! Something familiar.
Relax, Tony. It's really simple. There's a fresh air door on the passenger side of the plenum chamber, and when this door is open, fresh air enters the passenger compartment directly for maximum cooling and ventilation. An air door between the blower and the distribution duct is operated by the temperature control lever. When opened, air from the plenum chamber is blown into the distribution duct by the blower.
A long damper in the distribution duct directs air to either the floor outlets or to the defroster outlets on the top of the instrument panel.
Yeah, and that distribution damper is operated by the control ring around the heater blower switch. A full turn clockwise sends all heated air toward the windshield for full defrosting. When turned only partway, the heated air is divided between defroster and floor outlets, so the owner can regulate the amount of defrosting and heating to suit any condition. Fresh, unheated air can be directed inside the car two ways. First, opening the fresh air door lets air enter the intake grill through the plenum chamber and through the open door to the interior. Second, you can close the fresh air door and move the temperature control lever to its on position. This opens the air door between the blower and the distribution duct and lets air in the plenum chamber circulate through the distribution duct and inside the car.
If it's heat you want, close the fresh air door. Move the temperature lever toward warmer. Turn the blower control on to increase warm airflow.
Right. And if you want defrosting, turn the ring around the blower knob for the amount of defrosting needed, partial or full.
Hey, that's not so complicated. Now, how about the air conditioning system?
Well, the hot water heater and the air conditioning systems are combined in a single unit and mounted in the dash panel. The whole story on operation of this new system is in this reference book. Be sure to bone up on it, too.
Okay. But is there any special attention needed by that combination unit?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Murph. A car equipped with air conditioning has a 180-degree thermostat, and you must have permanent type antifreeze in the cooling system all year.
Even in the summertime?
Especially then, Murph. There's got to be enough antifreeze to protect the cooling system down to 20 degrees even in summer.
Well, how come?
Well, because air flows through the heater core after it has passed around the evaporator coils. It might be cold enough to freeze the coolant in the heater core. So, year-round antifreeze protection is a must for cars equipped with this new air conditioning system.
And remember, you'll have to protect that coolant down to even a lower temperature, depending on how cold you expect it to get during the winter.
Well, that makes sense.
Fine. Now, those are some of the new features for 57 that I learned about in Detroit. You'll find more details and information on other new features in this reference book.
Okay, Fritz, and thanks. I can see where we're going to have to burn the midnight oil.
Well, don't let it throw you. A little book reading and extra special care when you get new cars to prepare for delivery